Congressman Adam Kinzinger joins us now. Congressman, thanks for being here this morning. So you've clearly thrown down on one side of this issue saying, hey, the Freedom Caucus are the reason why we didn't get enough votes to eventually vote on the bill. But the question I have for you is, who are these Democrats on Capitol Hill that are ready and prepared to support President Trump's agenda to repeal and replace Obamacare?
Well, no, you're not going to find any that are ready to repeal and replace. I think we missed our opportunity. Maybe we're going to have it later, but look, just logistically, and I know people say, oh, they've been talking too much about process. Well, process actually matters in legislating because it tells you what you can or can't do. We missed our opportunity for budget reconciliation, where we can get under 60 votes in the Senate, because we have to pass another budget resolution to move on to tax reform now, which the president has made clear he wants to do, and we do too. We lose this shot out of the barrel for budget reconciliation. So if we want to do anything with health care this year, you by definition need Democrats, because you have to have 60 votes in the Senate. But you're never going to get
You're never going to
get a repeal and replace.
You're echoing what the president said on Friday. We got to work. He's willing to work with Democrats if they're going to come to the table. And here's what the president tweeted moments ago, though. He said Democrats are smiling in D.C. that the Freedom Caucus, with the help of Club for Growth and the Heritage, have saved Planned Parenthood and Obamacare. So he's pointing the finger squarely at the Freedom Caucus and those who weren't on board with this vote. But sounds like he's willing to reach out to Democrats and make stuff happen. Tax reform, infrastructure reform. What do you say?
Well, look, you have to. I mean, the president, I met the president in the Oval Office, and I got to tell you, he was extremely impressive in terms of his negotiating skills. He was willing to listen to people. Somebody that was a no in my group, he'd be like, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to get you? What's your concerns? He was genuinely interested. The speaker worked his tail off to get to something. But when you have a group of 30 people that are legitimately unwilling to ever get to yes, and when you give them what they ask for, they move the goalpost yet again, you're never going to get this bill done. Instead, they use it as an opportunity, speaking very frankly, to go out and get on the cameras and get in the newspapers and get on television and empower these other groups that raise money on this.
Look, there are a lot of angry Americans right now that they were promised for 7 years straight, as you know, that once they had the power, they were going to repeal and replace Obamacare, put something better in place as we know it. What is the mood like in the House between you and some of the more moderate members and the Freedom Caucus? What is it like behind closed doors right now? Because I imagine there are a lot of fingers being pointed at the Speaker of the House, and there's probably a lot of anger at the Freedom Caucus, as we just saw in President Trump's tweet, that they're the reason why this bill didn't pass.
Look, we're actually a very united caucus, with the exception of about 30 people. I think that's what's important to keep in mind. There's 200 of us, or whatever the final number was, that were realizing this may not be a perfect bill, but we have to pass it. We have to move forward. Sure. The president very eloquently made the point that, look, this is our opportunity, guys. We made this promise. I made this promise. And there were, again, 30 or 40 people that said...
Without those 30, 40 people,
that's right,
you can't get certain things passed, and that's why you're saying you've got to cross the aisle and maybe get some.
But why are we trying to find refuge in Democrats who are never going to vote for the bill? I mean, there's also a criticism that the process the Speaker led never involved the Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus was not in the room when this bill was written. So they're reverse engineering, trying to get things in that we were always promised would be a part of a repeal and replace. And so they're saying, hey, we're getting scraps here. I mean, were they not? They weren't involved at the beginning.
What is hilarious to me is the Freedom Caucus will be the first to come on TV and say, we're not going by regular order. We need to do our work in the committees. We did this in the committees. I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee. We developed half of this bill with the Ways and Means Committee. We have 2 Freedom Caucus members on the Ways and Means Committee. This bill comes out organically through this process, and then the Freedom Caucus Committee says they're upset because they weren't offered the opportunity to write this bill. That's not regular order. You don't write bills.
So the president this morning seems like he's shaming. The word shame, he's pointing the finger at the Freedom Caucus. And you have said the same thing. And so the president, maybe we look to his book, The Art of the Deal, for when it's appropriate to shame people. And he wrote this. He says, the risk is that you'll make a bad situation worse, and I certainly don't recommend this approach to everyone, but my experience is that if you're fighting for something you believe in, even if it means alienating some people along the way, things usually work out for the best in the end. Do you buy that?
I mean, it's probably accurate. He knows how to deal. It's a good book. But I'm going to say in this case, I don't know if he's necessarily following the blueprint of his book. But I think it is important. It's part of the reason I'm doing this show today. It is important to talk to our base about what really happened. This idea that, you know, somehow Speaker Ryan failed. He worked his tail off. I mean, he had
7 years,
nights.
Congressman. He had 7. You guys. I mean, that's the criticism for critics. Hey, you guys have repealed it 100 times when you knew Obama would veto it. Now you got a chance, and you can't wrangle a smart guy like Speaker Ryan can't pull in a few coalitions to get to 216? Is that not a fair criticism?
There is this impression that somehow we pulled this out of our back pocket at the last minute. This is part of the better way. This has been in process for a very long time. It was finally revealed because, you know, we've been developing this for months, if not years, in theory. This follows Tom Price's plan that he put out years ago. So this idea that we just magically pulled this unicorn out, it may make for good media or may make for good arguments on the other side of the aisle or on the Freedom Caucus,
but the president not know about it? You know, the argument this morning we've heard from David Bossie and others is that the president really didn't know what was in the bill. How does that happen? I mean, if the president doesn't know
and it was misrepresented that there was full broad support, that it would get the votes it needed.
You have members of that were going to vote no on this trying to dump this on the president by saying, boy, he just didn't answer my questions. He just didn't know. Even though there were policy experts that knew all the details, he was very engaged. The president knew a ton about this bill. Even I was involved in drafting this, sometimes when it comes to technicality, have to still ask experts deeper questions because that's why they're experts.
All right.
So
what's the answer now? Because a lot of people are waiting for tax reform. People are saying that should have been the first thing to have been tackled in his presidency. The president says this has got to get done. I can get this done. What is the answer? How does he do it?
Yeah, I think we have to move on to taxes. I think with tax reform and infrastructure, which the president promised, there really is an opportunity to reach out to some on the other side of the aisle. We're not talking about getting Nancy Pelosi in this, but we're saying there are 20 or 30 Democrats that we consider blue dogs or moderates that have had the same goal, whether it's tax reform or infrastructure.
Well, they have to win elections in places that, you know, their constituents, they want tax reform.
Yeah, and they do win those elections. A lot of them are in moderate or actually even some Republican districts. And then some of them are really determined to do this. So I think look, we're not going to get 150 Democrats on our party. I'm not trying to pretend that. But if some, you can offset, frankly, the no-ism of the Freedom Caucus for the last 5 years, and we can actually achieve some big things.
Right.
That'll be the
Everyone's
calculus that would have to happen because you're going to lose some strong conservatives if you pull them on any sort of a bill. Very interesting. Congressman Adam Kinzinger, also a veteran. Thank you for your service in both capacities.
Thanks for being with us.